Don't worry about this, Laura. It's just a temporary holding account for a new investment. You won't even have to think about it. My ex-husband, a man whose charm was as vast as his greed, smiled that easy smile as he had me sign the papers. I was just the ex-wife, the harmless, slightly clueless artist he was still so friendly with. He thought he was being clever, hiding millions of undeclared dollars in an account with my name on it to dodge a massive IRS audit. He never expected that the quiet artist had a newfound passion for civic duty. And he certainly never expected that the IRS was about to receive a very detailed, very specific, and very large, anonymous tip. This is the story of a man who used his ex-wife as a hiding place and a woman who decided to turn on the lights. If you believe that a tax audit is the coldest revenge of all, subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because you are about to witness the most satisfying 1040 form ever filed. Part 1. The ink on our divorce papers was barely 6 months dry, but here was Mark, my ex-husband, sitting in my sunny little art studio in Santa Monica, acting as if nothing had changed. He still had a key. I hadn't had the heart to ask for it back yet. Our divorce had been, on the surface, amicably Californian. No screaming matches, just a quiet, sad agreement that we had grown into different people. He was a high-flying real estate developer, a man who lived in a world of high-stakes deals and leveraged risk. I was a ceramicist, a woman who found her joy in the quiet, tactile world of clay and glazes. We had agreed to a simple, clean split of our declared assets. Or so I had thought. He came to me with a favor. He was launching a new, highly sensitive, commercial real estate project in downtown LA and needed a temporary, neutral account to hold the initial investor capital, to keep it off the books until the deal was finalized. "It's just for a few months, Laura," he'd said, his voice a smooth, confident purr. "Using a new account under my name would trigger all sorts of regulatory red tape. Using yours, it's clean, simple, a blank slate. It would be a huge help." He had the paperwork all ready, a simple signature for a new joint savings account. He would manage it, of course. I wouldn't have to do a thing. I had hesitated. A small, quiet alarm bell was ringing in the back of my mind. But I was still grieving the end of our 20-year marriage. I still, on some level, wanted to believe he was the man I had once loved. I wanted to believe this was a gesture of continued friendship, of trust. His request was framed as a compliment to my clean financial record, my quiet, unassuming life. It was a life he had often mocked during our marriage as being small and unambitious. Now, suddenly, my smallness was an asset to him. I ignored the alarm bell. I wanted to be helpful, to prove that our divorce was truly amicable. I signed the papers. A week later, I received the first statement for the new account. The balance was $3,200,000. I felt a wave of nausea. This was not investor capital. This was something else. This was something dangerous. Will this heartless deceit lead to a shocking karmic reckoning? This story of a hidden crime is just getting started. If you're hooked by this story of karma, subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter. Part 2. Mark's entire life was a carefully constructed illusion of effortless success. He was a master of the Southern California real estate game, a world built on leverage, charm, and a creative interpretation of the tax code. He drove a vintage convertible, he had a house in the Hollywood Hills with an infinity pool, and he knew the name of the maitre d' at every trendy restaurant from Beverly Hills to Malibu. What I had learned during our marriage, and what had ultimately led to our divorce, was that this entire empire was a house of cards, built on a foundation of hidden debt, shell corporations, and a level of financial risk-taking that made my stomach churn. I was the stable one, the artist with the quiet, debt-free life. I see now that he didn't just love me, he needed me. I was his anchor, his alibi, the one piece of authentic, stable ground in his chaotic, fraudulent world. Our divorce had been predicated on a lie. We had sat with our lawyers and divided our community property, a portfolio that seemed comfortable, but not extravagant. He had claimed his business was struggling, that a series of bad market turns had left him with very little liquid capital. I, wanting nothing more than a peaceful exit, had agreed to a modest settlement, leaving him with the majority of his business assets. I had walked away with my studio, my own savings, and a profound sense of relief. I had no idea that he had been systematically hiding millions in offshore accounts and undeclared capital gains for years. He had not just divorced me, he had defrauded me. My antagonist was not just a cheating husband, but a professional con artist whose greatest victim had been me. His decision to use my name, my clean identity, for this new account was the height of his arrogant hypocrisy. He had spent years subtly belittling my financial intelligence, treating me like a child who couldn't be trusted with the complex family finances. Now, he was trusting me with the very secret that could send him to prison. It was not a sign of respect. It was a sign of his ultimate, contemptuous dismissal of me. He did not see me as a threat. He saw me as a tool, a safe, and a fool. What is this hidden money that could change everything? Part 3. The bank statement sat on my pottery wheel for a full day, a toxic presence in my sanctuary. My first instinct was to call him, to scream, to demand he take his dirty money out of my life. But my second instinct, a colder, more logical one, took over. What was his game? Why was he so desperate to hide this specific amount of money, right now? The conflict became a quiet, urgent investigation. The obstacle was my own fear. I had just escaped this man's chaotic world. The thought of being pulled back in, of being implicated in whatever crime he was committing, was terrifying. I started digging. I used the skills I had developed as a freelance artist, the meticulous, patient research I used to track down rare glazes or historical pottery techniques. I went online. I searched for his name, for his company, for any public records of his new project. I found nothing. But then I broadened my search. I started looking for news about his known business partners, about the properties he had recently sold. And then I found it. A small article in the business section of the LA Times. It was an exposé on a group of local developers who were being investigated by the IRS for a massive, multi-year tax evasion scheme involving offshore shell corporations. One of the primary targets of the investigation was a man I knew to be Mark's silent partner. The blood drained from my face. It all clicked into place. The sudden, amicable divorce. The claims of being broke. And now, the $3 million. It wasn't investor capital. It was his profit from a dirty deal, cash he had just pulled out of an offshore account and needed to hide from the feds, who were closing in on his partner and would inevitably be coming for him next. He hadn't put the money in my name as a favor. He had put it there to frame me if he got caught. If the IRS found the account, he would claim it was my money, a secret stash I had hidden from him during the divorce. He had not just used me as a safe, he had set me up to be his scapegoat. Will a secret from the past turn the tables? Part 4. The ticking clock was the IRS investigation. I had no idea how close they were, but the newspaper article suggested it was imminent. I was in a race against a federal agency I couldn't see. My complicity, however unknowing, could have devastating legal and financial consequences for me. My quiet, peaceful life was about to be destroyed. The subplot that became my salvation was a man named Ben, a quiet, unassuming tax lawyer who had an office in a small, sleepy building a few blocks from my studio. He was a semi-retired former IRS investigator, a man who had spent 40 years hunting men exactly like my ex-husband. I went to him not as a client, but as a terrified citizen seeking advice. I laid out the whole story. I showed him the bank statement. I showed him the newspaper article. He listened, his face a grim, unreadable mask. "Your ex-husband is a very stupid, very arrogant man," he said, his voice a low growl. "He has not only committed tax fraud, but he has implicated you in a criminal conspiracy. You are in serious trouble, Laura." The complexity of the situation was immense. If I went to the IRS myself, I could be seen as a co-conspirator trying to cut a deal. If I did nothing, I would be found out, and my ignorance would not be an acceptable defense. Ben explained the legal nightmare I was in. I felt the walls closing in. But then, a slow, predatory smile spread across his face. "However," he said, "there is a way out. A way that not only protects you, but also ensures that Mr. Magnificent over there gets exactly what's coming to him. It's called the IRS Whistleblower Program." But will the next event shock everyone? Part 5. The IRS Whistleblower Program, as Ben explained it, was a thing of terrifying, bureaucratic beauty. It allowed a private citizen to anonymously provide the IRS with specific, credible information about a major tax fraud. If the information led to a successful recovery of unpaid taxes and penalties, the whistleblower was legally entitled to a percentage, often a very large percentage, of the total amount recovered. This was the turning point. The narrative shifted instantly. I was no longer a potential defendant, I was a potential bounty hunter. The money Mark had hidden in my name was not a liability, it was a weapon. It was the irrefutable, smoking gun evidence of his crime. And he had hand-delivered it to me. "We won't just report the 3 million, Ben said, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. We will use the 3 million as the cornerstone. We will build a case. We will give them his entire fraudulent life on a silver platter. We'll give them the offshore accounts he hid during the divorce, the shell corporations, everything. We will make you the most credible, most detailed, and most devastating anonymous source they have ever seen." My vengeance was no longer just about self-preservation. It was about justice. It was about the years he had lied to me, the life he had built on the theft from others, the way he had so casually and cruelly tried to use me as his final shield. I thought about the modest settlement I had accepted, the lies he had told about being broke. This was not just about his tax fraud. This was about getting back what he had stolen from me. "Okay," I said, my voice steady, my fear gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "Let's do it. Let's give them an anonymous tip he'll never forget. How will this shocking secret change their lives forever? This incredible twist has you hooked? Subscribe now for more stories of delicious karma." Part 6. The next 2 weeks were a blur of secret, meticulous work. Ben and I, working from his dusty, book-filled office, became a 2-person intelligence agency. I was the key witness. I had 20 years of memories, of overheard phone calls, of mysterious business trips to the Cayman Islands, of bits and pieces of information that I had never understood but had stored away. Ben, with his encyclopedic knowledge of the tax code and IRS procedure, knew exactly what questions to ask, how to piece together the seemingly unrelated fragments into a coherent narrative of massive, systemic fraud. We drafted the whistleblower submission. It was not a simple letter. It was a 100-page legal document, a detailed, cross-referenced indictment of Mark's entire financial life. The centerpiece was the account in my name, the Rosetta Stone, as Ben called it, that unlocked the meaning of all his other transactions. The immediate consequence of our work was the creation of a legal bomb. The repercussions were, for now, completely invisible to Mark. He called me once, his voice full of his old, breezy charm. "Hey, Laura. Just wanted to let you know, the deal is closing. I'll be moving that money out of the account in a few days. Thanks again for being such a good sport about it." "Of course, Mark," I had said, my voice a perfect imitation of the harmless, clueless ex-wife. "Whatever you need." He had no idea he was a dead man walking. He had no idea that a file with his name on it was already on its way to the IRS's Criminal Investigation Division, and that the person who had sent it was the same woman he was so casually dismissing on the phone. Will they overcome this new challenge? Part 7. The day after Ben filed the whistleblower claim, my growth began. It was a process of disentanglement, of methodically and completely removing myself from the blast radius of Mark's impending doom. The challenge was to overcome the lingering emotional ties, the 20 years of shared history that still, despite everything, bound me to him. A part of me still felt a flicker of guilt, of pity for the destruction I was about to unleash. My transformation was in my decision to channel that feeling into a new, healthier future for myself. I took the first, terrifying step of moving on. I put my small studio in Santa Monica up for sale. It was filled with too many ghosts, too many memories of the woman I used to be, the woman who had believed his lies. I used my own legitimate savings, the money he had never been able to touch, and I bought a small, beautiful, and slightly dilapidated property in Topanga Canyon, a place that felt a world away from the slick, coastal world Mark inhabited. It was a property with an old, kiln shed in the back, a place I could build a new, bigger studio, a new life. I spent my days covered in dust and paint, rebuilding the studio with my own 2 hands. I was overcoming my past not by fighting it, but by building a new future that had no room for it. Every swing of the hammer, every bag of concrete I mixed, was an act of defiant creation. I was no longer the woman who was a blank slate for him to write his crimes on. I was an artist building my own foundation, a foundation that was solid, honest, and entirely my own. But what awaits them in the next confrontation? Part 8. For 6 months, there was silence. The wheels of the federal government grind slowly. I finished my new studio. I started creating a new body of work, inspired by the wild, rugged beauty of the canyon. I almost began to believe that nothing would happen. And then, it began. It started not with a phone call to me, but with a series of quiet, devastating moves by the IRS. They froze his business accounts. They put a lien on his house in the hills. They subpoenaed his partners. Mark's entire house of cards, which had been standing on a foundation of pure, arrogant confidence, began to sway. He called me, his voice a raw nerve of pure, unadulterated panic. "Laura, you won't believe what's happening. The IRS, they're auditing me. It's a full-blown criminal investigation. They know everything. The offshore accounts, everything. Someone must have talked. Someone must have tipped them off." I let him rant, my face a mask of shocked, sympathetic concern. "Oh, Mark, that's terrible," I said. "What are you going to do?" The climax was not going to be a confrontation where I revealed myself. It was going to be his own, self-inflicted implosion, and I was going to have a front-row seat, playing the role of the supportive, horrified ex-wife. My final preparation was to simply keep my voice calm, my story straight, and to let him hang himself with the rope he himself had spooled. The final confrontation will reveal everything, won't it? Part 9. "I don't know what to do," he wailed, his voice cracking. "They have everything. It's like they were inside my head. The only thing they haven't found yet is that holding account, the one we set up. Thank God. It's the only liquid cash I have left in the world. I need you to go to the bank, Laura. I need you to pull it out. In cash. Before they find it, too." The climax was here. His final, desperate, and deeply stupid move. He was asking me to commit a federal crime, structuring a cash withdrawal to avoid reporting requirements, to save him. He was still, even now, seeing me as his tool, his accomplice. "Mark, I don't know," I said, my voice a perfect performance of a terrified, law-abiding woman. "That sounds illegal. I'm scared." "Laura, please," he begged, his voice now a pathetic, desperate whine. "It's my only chance. You have to help me. For old time's sake. You owe me this." Owe him. The sheer, magnificent arrogance of that statement was the final nail in his coffin. "Okay, Mark," I said, after a long, dramatic pause. "Okay. For old time's sake. I'll do it." I hung up the phone. I did not go to the bank. I picked up my phone again and called the direct line of the lead IRS criminal investigator on the case, a number Ben had given me months ago. "Agent Thompson," I said. "This is the Weaver. I have an update for you on the Mark Miller case. He's about to attempt to withdraw $3 million in cash. I think you might want to be there when he does." I then called Mark back. "Mark," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm at the bank. They're saying because it's a joint account, they need your signature, too. You have to come down here." He didn't hesitate. He was on his way. My vengeance was complete. I had not just given the IRS a tip. I had gift-wrapped my ex-husband and delivered him, in person, to their front door. But how will this change their future? Part 10. Mark was arrested in the lobby of the bank, trying to convince a teller to give him $3 million in a briefcase. The charge was not just tax evasion, but also witness tampering and obstruction of justice. His attempt to have me illegally withdraw the funds had added years to his eventual sentence. The legal fallout was immense. He was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. The IRS, using the information from my anonymous tip, recovered over $20 million in unpaid taxes, fines, and penalties from his hidden assets. The long-term consequence for him was the complete and total annihilation of the life he had built on lies. And for me, a year and a half later, a check arrived in the mail from the U.S. Treasury Department. It was my whistleblower award. It was for $3.5 million. The emotional resolution was not in the money, but in the profound, cosmic irony of it all. I had not only gotten back the money he had stolen from me during the divorce, but I had gotten it back with interest, and with the full, legal blessing of the United States government. I used the money to build a new, larger kiln at my studio in Topanga Canyon and to establish a grant for struggling female artists in Los Angeles. The rest of it, I invested, with the help of a very good, very honest financial advisor. One afternoon, Ben, my old tax lawyer, came to visit me at my new studio. He looked at my new work, at the beautiful, honest things I was making with my own two hands. "You know," he said with a smile, "this is a much better investment." I couldn't agree more. Financial deception can be a silent poison in a relationship, a betrayal that is as deep as any other. This story is a powerful reminder to always trust your instincts, to seek your own knowledge, and to never, ever let anyone make you feel small or incapable when it comes to your own life. Have you ever had a moment where you had to fight for your own financial independence? Share your story of strength in the comments below. If this story of a woman who balanced the books resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more emotional tales of justice.